From Nigel Mansell reversing through the pit lane and then ignoring a black flag, to Yuji Ide causing a crash so dangerous the FIA took away his super license. In this video, we're looking at F1 drivers who pushed things too far and ended up banned from racing. Let's start with Jean-Pierre Beltoise. Our first name goes back more than 5 decades to a cold January weekend in Argentina. In 1971, French driver Jean-Pierre Beltoise was taking part in the Buenos Aires 1,000-kilometer sports car race. It was not a Formula One event, but what happened there would follow him straight into his F1 career and change everything for him. During the race, his Matra ran out of fuel near the final corner. The pits were only about 750 yards away, and with no barrier separating the track from the pits, Beltoise climbed out of the cockpit and started pushing his car back toward his crew. The rules clearly said this was not allowed. Marshals waved yellow flags, but nobody stopped him. That decision cost a man his life. Ferrari driver Ignazio Giunti was flying down the track behind Mike Parks, trying to overtake. He never saw the Matra sitting in the middle of the road. He slammed into it at full speed. His car flipped through the air, rolled about 150 meters, and burst into flames. Giunti died from his injuries and the burns. Beltoise only survived because he had been standing on the right side of his car when the impact happened. Argentine authorities charged Beltoise with negligent homicide. He was released on bail. The FIA suspended his racing license for several months, and he missed a string of races that year. Just 7 years later, another driver would face the same wave of public anger after another life was lost on a race weekend. Riccardo Patrese. Young Italian driver Riccardo Patrese was piloting his Arrows on the opening lap. As the pack thundered toward the first chicane, a multi-car crash exploded on the approach. Patrese's Arrows was in the middle of it, along with James Hunt's McLaren and Ronnie Peterson's Lotus. Peterson's car smashed into the barriers with brutal force and burst into flames. He was pulled from the wreck alive but suffered severe leg fractures. He died the next day from an embolism connected to those injuries. The fingers pointed straight at Patrese. Some of the biggest names on the grid, including Hunt, Niki Lauda, Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, and Jody Scheckter, blamed his aggressive driving for the crash. They did not stop at blame. They threatened to boycott the next race, the United States Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, if he was allowed to compete. Under that pressure, race organizers and the Arrows team pulled him out of the event. Here's the twist that most fans do not know. An Italian court later cleared Patrese of any wrongdoing. Overhead photos of the accident showed his car was nowhere near the actual contact that started the pileup. Many now describe the whole episode as a witch hunt driven by his fellow drivers. He went on to have a long career and finished second in the 1992 championship. The next case takes us to the tightest track in Formula One, where one moment of confusion shocked the whole paddock. Christian Danner. The 1987 Monaco Grand Prix should have been a normal free practice session for German driver Christian Danner. He was behind the wheel of his Zackspeed, moving slowly on fresh tires, weaving left and right to warm them up on the uphill section known as Beau Rivage, which sits right after the tricky Santa Devote corner. Behind him, Michele Alboreto was closing in fast in his Ferrari, hunting for a proper lap time. Alboreto tried to squeeze past on the left. The two cars touched. That contact sent the Ferrari flying into the air. It caught fire. It was destroyed. Alboreto walked away without a scratch. The stewards did something no one had ever seen before. They kicked Danner out of the entire race weekend. It was the first full weekend exclusion of its kind in the history of the Formula One World Championship. Officially, the reason was dangerous driving, but almost nobody in the paddock agreed with the ruling. Alboreto himself said the crash was a typical Monaco moment and that Danner was not the one mainly at fault. Ayrton Senna, who had seen the whole thing happen from his own car, publicly defended Danner too. Zackspeed had to run just one car that weekend, giving all the track time to Martin Brundle. Years later, Danner would talk openly about how much Ferrari influence had played a role behind the scenes. 2 years later, a British hero would ignore the sport's most feared signal and pay the price with a huge fine and a race off his calendar. Nigel Mansell. By September of 1989, Nigel Mansell was one of the biggest names in the sport, driving for Ferrari, chasing every last chance at glory. At the Portuguese Grand Prix in Estoril, he was in a fight for the lead when he came in for a pit stop late in the race. That is when things fell apart. He overshot his pit box by a few meters. Instead of driving around and coming back in, he shifted into reverse and backed up in the pit lane to reach his crew. That was completely against the rules. The officials responded by showing him the black flag. In Formula One, the black flag means was one thing and one thing only. You are out of the race. Come to the pits right now. Mansell did not obey. He kept driving. He kept fighting Ayrton Senna for position. He ignored that flag for lap after lap. And then on lap 48, he lunged at Senna in a wild overtake attempt at turn 1. The two cars collided and both went off into the gravel. The stewards hit Mansell hard. They fined him $50,000. They banned him from the next race, the Spanish Grand Prix. Mansell would spend the rest of his life claiming he never actually saw the black flag being waved at him. Ferrari, still hurting from the loss, chose not to bring in a replacement driver for the missed race. The 90s opened with even more chaos, and one of the biggest bans of the whole decade came from a driver in only his second F1 season. Eddie Irvine. Northern Irish driver Eddie Irvine was still finding his feet in Formula One when the 1994 Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos threw him into the middle of a mess he would never fully live down. Around lap 35, Irvine was working his way through slower traffic in his Jordan. He was catching Eric Bernard's Ligier. What he did not see was Jos Verstappen, the young Dutch rookie driving for Benetton on his F1 debut, coming down the outside to try and overtake him. Irvine moved left. His car clipped Verstappen. The result was ugly. Verstappen's Benetton was launched into a violent, high-speed spin that quickly became a barrel roll. On its way through the air, it also collected Martin Brundle's McLaren. 4 cars ended their race in that one moment. By some miracle, nobody was seriously hurt. Irvine tried to defend himself, saying his mirror had come loose and that Bernard had braked when he was not expecting it. The stewards were not impressed. They handed him a 1-race ban and a $10,000 fine. Jordan felt this was too harsh and decided to appeal. That was a mistake. The FIA World Council not only rejected the appeal, it made the punishment worse. His ban was increased from 1 race to 3. He would miss the Pacific Grand Prix, the San Marino Grand Prix, and the Monaco Grand Prix. Aguri Suzuki and then Andrea de Cesaris had to fill in for him. That same 1994 season would see 2 more big names taken off the grid, starting with a future double world champion, Mika Hakkinen. Mika Hakkinen was still building his reputation as a future star at McLaren when the 1994 season delivered one of the toughest lessons of his young career. It all began at the British Grand Prix. On the very last lap of the race, Hakkinen and Rubens Barrichello of Jordan came together in a hard collision. The stewards decided both drivers had shared blame. They gave both men a 1-race ban, but they suspended those bans for the next 3 races. The message was clear: behave, and the punishment stays on paper. Step out of line again, and you sit out. Hakkinen did not have to wait long to fall into that trap. At the very next race, the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, he did exactly what the officials feared. On the opening lap at the first corner, he triggered a massive multi-car pileup. The chain reaction of contact damaged or destroyed a long list of cars in a single moment. That was all it took. The suspended ban was immediately activated. Hakkinen had to sit out the Hungarian Grand Prix that followed. His seat at McLaren was given to French veteran Philippe Alliot for that one weekend. It was a hard reminder that no matter how much talent a driver had, one small moment of misjudgment on the opening lap could shut everything down. Hakkinen came back, kept his head down, and eventually won 2 world titles. The very same 1994 championship also delivered a ban to the man who would still go on to win the title, Michael Schumacher. At the 1994 British Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher and Benetton got into a fight with the officials that would end up costing them 2 full races. It all started before the race had even really begun. Damon Hill was sitting on pole position. Schumacher overtook Hill on the formation lap, which is completely against the rules. There was a restart, and once again, Schumacher overtook Hill on the formation lap. The stewards had seen enough. They gave him a 5-second stop-go penalty and told him to come into the pits to serve it. Schumacher did not come in. Instead, Benetton kept him out on track and started arguing with race officials about the penalty. Then came the black flag. That same black flag Nigel Mansell had ignored 5 years earlier. Schumacher ignored it too for several laps while his team fought its battle in the pit lane. Eventually, he did come in and serve the penalty, but it did not matter. He was later thrown out of the race result entirely. Then the FIA World Motorsport Council brought down the hammer. Schumacher was given a 2-race ban, forcing him to miss the Italian and Portuguese Grands Prix. Benetton was hit with a large fine on top of that. The team appealed. The ban was upheld. JJ Leto was brought in as a substitute, and in one of the strangest stories of the era, Schumacher still went on to win the 1994 Drivers' Championship. 3 years later, another champion in the making would find himself excluded from a race that could have decided his entire title. Jacques Villeneuve. The 1997 Formula One season came down to the very last race of the year, the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. Jacques Villeneuve was leading the championship for Williams, and every point mattered. But Villeneuve came into that weekend already carrying a suspended one-race ban from earlier in the season, hanging over him because of past yellow flag offenses. He needed to be careful. He needed to be spotless, and that is not what happened. During Saturday free practice, Jos Verstappen's Tyrrell came to a stop out on track. Yellow flags came out. The rule is simple. You slow down. Villeneuve did not slow down enough. Neither did several other drivers, including Michael Schumacher. They all committed the same offense. They all got in trouble, but for most of them, the punishment was another suspended ban. For Villeneuve, it was different. His prior record meant the exclusion was immediate. He was thrown out of the race. Williams appealed the decision right away, which allowed him to keep racing while the appeal was being considered. He started from pole position and finished 5th. But when the appeal was later withdrawn and effectively rejected, his result and all the points that came with it were stripped from the record. Despite losing all those points from Japan, Villeneuve still managed to win the 1997 World Championship at the final round in Jerez. It stands as one of the most unusual title victories in the history of the sport. Almost a decade later, a punishment came down that would end a driver's F1 career for good. UGID. Yuji Ide only got 4 races to prove himself in Formula One, and things went wrong almost immediately. The Japanese driver joined Super Aguri in 2006, but he struggled to keep up with the rest of the grid and quickly became involved in several incidents. Before long, other drivers and teams were questioning whether he was experienced enough to be racing at that level. Then came the crash that finally pushed the FIA too far. At the San Marino Grand Prix, ID collided with Christijan Albers of Midland, sending his car into a terrifying series of rolls. Albers escaped without serious injury, but the crash only added to the concerns surrounding ID, and this time the FIA decided something had to be done. The FIA Permanent Bureau made a decision that had almost never been made before at this level. They revoked his super license for the rest of the 2006 season. In their view, he simply did not have enough experience or skill to be safely racing at that level. Super Aguri released an official statement confirming the withdrawal. Frank Montagny was brought in to replace him, and in the years that followed, Yuji Ide never returned to Formula One. His name became a warning about how quickly the sport can close its doors on a driver. The next name on our list nearly caused a tragedy that would have shocked all of motorsport. Romain Grosjean. The start of the 2012 Belgian Grand Prix at Spa lasted only a few seconds before it descended into complete chaos. Romain Grosjean, driving for Lotus, was pulling away from the grid when he moved across the front of Lewis Hamilton at the La Source hairpin. He squeezed Hamilton toward the pit wall. Their cars touched. That contact was all it took. Grosjean's Lotus was launched off the ground and into the air. What followed was one of the most frightening opening lap crashes anyone in the paddock had ever seen. His airborne car came down onto Sergio Perez, then went sailing across the front of Fernando Alonso's Ferrari. It missed Alonso's helmet by only a few inches. If the timing had been slightly different, Alonso could have been killed on the spot. Hamilton, Alonso, Perez, and Grosjean were all out of the race in that single moment. The stewards did not hold back in their words. They described what had happened as an extremely serious breach, with the potential to cause serious injury. They gave Grosjean a one-race ban, forcing him to sit out the following Italian Grand Prix. On top of that, they hit him with a €50,000 fine. Jerome D'Ambrosio was brought in to replace him at Lotus for that one weekend. Lotus chose not to appeal. Grosjean would return, learn from the moment, and eventually reshape his reputation on the grid. And that finally brings us to the most recent name on this list. The first driver ever punished under a system introduced more than a decade ago. Kevin Magnussen. Danish driver Kevin Magnussen made a very unwanted piece of history in 2024. He became the first driver in Formula One to reach 12 penalty points on his super license within a rolling 12-month window. The super license points system had been introduced way back in 2014. For 10 years, no one had come close to actually setting it off. Magnussen changed that. His journey to 12 points was a slow drip of incidents spread across the season. In Saudi Arabia, he was involved in a collision with Alex Albon, which cost him 3 points. In China, he collided with Yuki Tsunoda, adding another 2. At the Miami sprint race, he repeatedly ran off the track defending his position, picking up another 3 points. In the main Miami Grand Prix, he collided with Logan Sargent, adding 2 more. Every incident brought him closer to the dangerous number. The final straw came at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Magnussen collided with Pierre Gasly at turn 4. That earned him another 2 points. That was it. He was now sitting on 12. The system did what it was designed to do, and it triggered an automatic one-race ban. Magnussen had to miss the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. His seat at Haas was taken by rising young driver Oliver Behrman for that one weekend. After the ban was served, his points count was reset back to 0. Found this information exciting and unbelievable? Be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.